things in a way of experimenting with these different things. So what are some diets that are there that you believe that actually work?
Sure. So I don't think in terms of diets. I think in terms of energy balance, which is calories, macronutrients, protein, fats, carbs, and then micronutrients, right? So most people aren't even tracking their food. So usually step one is just track what goes in your mouth for a week. Just do that. And what you're going to find is that's going to give you a lot of realization of what your patterns are, what your eating habits are. You might feel a little guilt and shame. Maybe you eat emotionally at times. Maybe you have judgment over food. You have a poor relationship with food. It's okay. Like if you're listening, it's okay. That's perfectly normal. But tracking is not going to make you obsessive or neurotic. It's actually going to be empowering because it gives you agency and it gives you competence over your diet. That's where I would start. I wouldn't go and say, what does keto say? What is DASH diet? What is the Mediterranean diet? Because now we're going to the Band-Aid of like, just give me a list of foods, see what's good and bad. That is a very rigid approach. And the evidence, speaking of the evidence has shown us for decades that a rigid approach to dieting, one that uses meal plans and good and bad foods, is not sustainable. It doesn't work in the long term. People end up losing weight and gaining it all back, and then they have a poor relationship with food. What I prefer is something called flexible dieting. You give yourself goals and constraints around your calories and constraints around your macros, and then you eat whatever you want that satisfies those constraints. Now, you talked about nutrients, right? If you meet your macros, so let's say you're eating the right amount of protein, fats, carbs, but you're hungry, or you don't have a lot of energy, or you're not performing in the gym, well, maybe the balance is off, but maybe you're lacking some nutrients. And that's where you go down the road of, okay, I'm hitting my macros, but pizza maybe isn't the best thing to do that to eat my macros all the time. So maybe I'm going to swap pizza. I'm going to stick in some, salmon. I'm going to stick in some, potatoes or fruits or vegetables or something else that kind of satisfies the craving, but I'm still going to have pizza on Saturday. There's ways to be very flexible about it and listen to your body at the same time while you're tracking. So it's not like one size fits all, and it's not obsessive. It's not like Weight Watchers and points and calorie counting. It's just, hey, I burn 2,000 calories a day. So if I eat 2,000 calories a day, I'm going to maintain my weight. So let me go eat 2,000 calories however I want to do that. That's flexible dieting. And if you are listening and you've never heard of that approach, it's very empowering. It's very freeing, and it can improve your relationship with food because you no longer tell yourself that this is bad, that I can't eat cake at the party. Instead, you say, how do I fit in cake at the party if I choose to? So that's the difference.
And I feel like it's a quite fascinating thing that you just mentioned, because the reason why I'm bringing that up is the fact that people keep on saying that you shouldn't eat cake, you shouldn't eat that slice of cake because it's bad for your, actually when you are in a diet, it's bad for your diet. It actually disrupt your diet. And I want to go back to something that you said, that in terms of tracking what you eat. Definitely that involves a lot of discipline, a lot of accountability. How do you actually advise people to build that discipline? As we both know that discipline is quite a difficult thing. And sometimes when you actually told yourself that you're going to do something and you miss it, at some point you blame yourself. And sometimes when you blame yourself, so you stop doing that certain thing because you feel guilty of just missing that one step.
Okay, so this is a big topic that I love. It has to do with habits and behaviors, right? And when you say discipline, I know what you mean, Aseko, but I tend to shy away from the use of willpower and discipline, even the concepts, because they imply some level of friction that you're trying to overcome. Instead, I would rather set up my environment and set up my day so that things automatically happen and my routines automatically happen, and they're just what I do, right? They're just what I do. Now to get from nothing to something, you're right. There's a little bit of friction. How do you do that? This is where I like baby steps, tiny habits that give you quick wins, because the best way to get motivated is not to get external motivation. It's to motivate yourself by getting a win, right? And so when it comes to like food, for example, if you're listening and you're like, oh, tracking sounds so overwhelming, which by the way, it doesn't take a lot of time if you're tracking with a good app, but that's a different situation. Do one thing, do a simple thing, add protein to your breakfast. How many people listening don't have very much protein to your breakfast? Right? Breakfast is usually where people have muffins and donuts and bagels, cereal. Maybe they have yogurt, but it's like the high sugar yogurt that doesn't have much protein. Or maybe they don't eat breakfast at all. So add protein to your breakfast, right? Right now, I just told you to do something that effectively is tracking your food because you're thinking about it. You have mindfulness about it. Then when you add protein with your breakfast for the next week, do you feel better? Like think about how you feel. Think about if you're fuller. Right? Think about what it gave you as a result, and now kind of feed that back in a loop to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. All right. You mentioned obesity before, or obese people. We were talking about choices. For sure, you have to be ready for change. And for sure, there's a lot of stigma, social stigma, low self-esteem, body dissatisfaction, even sometimes depression and things like that. But if you're open and ready for change, and I know a lot of people who have some weight to lose, in their minds, they know they want to do something about it. Getting support, getting somebody, it could be me, but it could be a free Facebook community. It could be a podcast like yours, Aseko, or mine, where you can just have the support and the push to kind of take that first step and take one step at a time. I think that is where it's at. I think, yeah, the information's great. I think the agency is great, but I think the community is what brings it all together. I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I just wanted to address the whole willpower thing because I think it's really about self-motivation through action and quick wins, to build those habits.
You spoke about a very important thing when it comes to this in terms of community. And I've seen the power of community, and in terms of actually with the question I wanted to also add about consistency, and again it's quite a difficult thing. And one thing that I realized, as you said, that those small wins really are important, because I remember when I was studying this podcast, and it was difficult in terms of being constant and listening week after week. I didn't actually have the energy. I didn't know what to do, what actually was meant from what was expected from my side. But I had a really powerful community where people will be able to say that they are inspired. They're inspired by the content that I'm providing. And that really, as much as it was an external motivation, but also at the same time, I felt good about myself. Through feeling good about myself, it really led me in a sense of, no, I should do this more. Whereas that motivation actually came out inside me, and realizing that I'm doing this for a greater good. I'm doing this just to assist people, because at some point in my life, I also had problems with mental health, and I didn't know what to do and what were those feelings. And also it goes back to that big stigma around mental health. It really does that. And also in terms of fitness, as much we're always told that fitness is good for you, it's good for your health. And how has building yourself the body that you have now has influenced your own mental state in terms of mental health?
Oh, it's tremendous. Self-esteem, confidence, the knowledge that you can do hard things. So here's where I come from. I think everybody should be lifting weights. Like to the day you die, any age, no matter how old you are right now, and you've never lifted weights, if you're 85, you can do it. You can start resistance training. I think it's so important for every human being to do that. But I also think when you do that, you will unlock this mental health that you're talking about. You will unlock confidence, and you will unlock mental resilience, which is even more important than this vague concept of positivity, mental health, I think. Because yes, the studies show that resistance training can not only improve, mood and short-term mental health, it actually improves long-term mental resilience, meaning when life hits you hard, when there's an earthquake that ravages your town, happened to one of my clients, or when, your spouse dies, or like something terrible happens in your life that would normally spiral you down, having that that base of fitness and doing hard things and pushing through from a physical standpoint translates to the mental side. So for me, it hasn't been so much about looks, even though, yes, I feel more confident in my body. I'm cool taking my shirt off at the beach, and I didn't used to be. Like, things like that are great. It's really that I can do it. Like, if you're listening, it's I can do it. If I can squat 135 pounds today, and then on 2 days from now, I can squat 140 pounds, you have just physically changed your body. You've caused it to adapt. And that directly translates to your brain, your gut, your organs, your bone, your every tissue in your body, and thus your mental state. So I'm very passionate about it, and it definitely will improve your mental health.
Speaking about lifting weights, and I remember earlier this year, and back then I was just someone that always told myself that I will never, ever lift weights. Because at some point when I started to lift dumbbells, homemade dumbbells, and it was difficult in my life. It was difficult. And I remember earlier this year, and at some point I actually enjoyed lifting weights as much as it was hard, but I had this mentality that it's fun doing this. And also I saw some shift within my mental state in terms of after coming from work and going to lift some weights. And yeah, I actually enjoyed it. And about self-confidence, and when you see that change within your body, you feel like you can do anything. And it's quite something that I feel like, as you mentioned that it's something that people actually don't realize that, as you've said, that you think that everyone should lift weights. And I would agree that they should, because it's one of the things that actually benefits your own mental state. And I feel like whenever you are in the gym and lifting, it's quite a different feeling, because you don't think about the outside things in terms of what has happened to you, in terms of if you had a bad day, you come to go to the gym and your mind is calm. One of the things that I think that is really important, and also something that actually usually rise up within this conversation within fitness and mental health. It's sleep. It's something that we find difficult to do. And there are people that talk about deep sleep. There are people that talk about you should sleep 8 hours a day. And how do you actually emphasize the importance of sleep within your clients?
Yeah, sleep is part of recovery, right? And recovery is necessary to get the most gains out of your lifting, to use the food that you're eating, to give your brain the full recovery it needs, which then improves your mental health, to improve fat loss, because when you are sleep deprived, your body will want to store more fat in the abdominal area, and that leads to more belly fat. It also leads to cravings. But when you get enough sleep, you actually don't feel as hungry. So I can go on, but like there are numerous benefits to having good sleep, both quantity, 7 to 9 hours is a recommendation, and also quality. Yes, there are a lot of sleep hacks out there that we can talk about, but really, I think it's pretty simple. I think it's number one, be consistent with your bedtime and wake time. And number two, try to avoid too much light exposure before you go to bed. Like, those are the simple things most people can do before you get into the advanced things. But just remember, your muscles get built between your workout sessions. They get built when you sleep. They don't get built when you're in the gym. So without the sleep, if you come into the gym and if I'm your coach and you say, hey, I missed the reps today, can you lower my weight? I'm like, no, let's look at why you missed your reps. Did you get enough sleep? Did you eat enough? Those are usually the culprits. So that's how important sleep is.
Mm-hmm. And it goes back to in terms of eating enough. And it's something that I've seen some of my friends do it when it comes to going to the gym and lifting weights. And they say that I think also was a meme that it said that I didn't eat when I went to the gym, and talking around saying that they would eat the gym in terms of eating the weights, in definitely metaphorically. And it's something that I didn't think per se that it really. Through this conversation, I've really learned a lot. And also something that I've learned a lot today is the thing of light and how it really affects you in terms of sleep and in terms of mental health and just in general within the food, because I just had a guest and 2 hours ago, whereas we spoke about in terms of what the importance of light and how he actually he didn't know the importance of light and he only didn't get the